Hello, I'm Takyang from Imaginary Math. Today, I'm gonna show you how to build an effective offline workflow for writing and typesetting LaTeX documents on iPad. I'm a PhD student in theoretical physics. I have a long history of working on iPad. I used the 3rd Gen iPad to take all my lecture notes during undergrad, and I've been using iPad Pro as my primary computing device for research and study since 2017. While it's really easy to find great tools for note-taking and active reading, for which I use Notability and Liquid Text, it's been quite a journey for me to figure out how to deal with LaTeX documents effectively, especially if I want to work entirely offline. But I think I've finally found the perfect setup. I'll share my findings with you so you don't have to dig through every search results and buy every possibly working or non-working apps in the App Store. I'll guide you through my setup first, and then show you how my workflow works. The apps involved in my setup are TextWriter by the developer Chaoji Li, Working Copy by Anders Borum, and Textastic by Alexander Black. Just a disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with any of them. Now, you might have the urge to go straight to the App Store to check them out, but you should definitely stay, as it's not trivial to have them work seamlessly together. First of all, to compile LaTeX documents offline, we need to install some text distribution on iPad OS, say TextLive. But it's not obvious how we can bring TextLive on iPad OS. It turns out that it's just not possible. But all is not lost. We can at least get PDF LaTeX working with the help of TextWriter. In my opinion, TextWriter is the best LaTeX compiler in the App Store. It has a solid file manager integrated with the Files app. It supports multitasking on the iPad perfectly. It also has a ton of customization and scripting capabilities. Furthermore, it has a transparent package management system that is based on plain files and directories. The only thing that probably holds some people back from TextWriter is that it looks a bit geeky and utilitarian, more like an app written for developers. For example, the editor draws inspiration from Emacs, and customization requires editing a plain text configuration file, which I'll talk about later. After installing TextWriter, it has already shipped with a minimum TextLive distribution. When typesetting a document that requires additional packages, it downloads them dynamically from Citan to its cache. However, the best thing is that it allows users to preload any packages, fonts, and etc. We just need to create a new folder called textmf-local in TextWriter and copy the packages we want into it. Theoretically, we can put the entirety of TextLive into it, but this is not a good idea. Since only PDF LaTeX related files can be used by TextWriter, this would waste a lot of storage. And also due to the less than robust file system on iPad OS, that amount of files often crush the Files app. So the best way to get it working offline is to only load the part of TextLive useful for TextWriter, following these steps. First, download the TextLive installer on the supported operating system from Text User Group. I'll have all the relevant links in the description down below. Then we run the installer and open Advanced Dialog to select the desired collections of packages. We hit Install and wait for it to finish. Open the Package Manager and install any additional packages. So now we have all the files we want from TextLive and more. Now we want to copy the relevant ones onto the iPad. We open the installation directory and navigate into the folder textmf-dist. Copy the folders, tags, fonts, and bibtag into the taxmf-local folder in TaxWriter via iTunes. Now back to the iPad. Navigate to the Settings tab of TaxWriter and tap on Refresh LS-R. The next typesetting in TaxWriter might take a long time to refresh LS-R. It's better to set the iPad auto-lock to Never and let TaxWriter finish its job. In this whole process, there are a few caveats I need to mention. First, it's better not to install too many additional fonts in the TaxLive collections. Again, the file system on iPad OS is still a little bit too fragile. Furthermore, there might still be some useless files copied in these 3 folders, but it's a serious chore to dig through the tax directory to pick each one of them. So I think this is a good compromise to make. For customization and scripting in TaxWriter, the developer's website has a reference manual, which I'll link below. The first half of it is about the Lisp language and not specific to TaxWriter. The best way to start is to scroll to the bottom and look at the sample twinInit.l file, which need to be copied into TaxWriter. However, there are some important features not documented in this reference manual. For example, pasting this block of code into twinInit.l file in TaxWriter will add reload button in text mode and compile button in PDF mode. This will be important when editing files in other apps while compiling in TaxWriter. I'll also link my own customization file in the description. Although the text editor in TaxWriter is very decent, with some beautifully implemented features like spell checking, Taxtastic is my text editor of choice here. One important reason is that it allows users to customize code completion. The developer has some examples of the built-in code completion configuration files on GitHub. However, the syntax is not documented at all. It took me a solid couple of hours to figure that out. I have written up a code completion file for LaTeX based on the LaTeX 2e on the official reference manual, which you can find below. You might have noticed the trend that GitHub has been used a lot. Then you shouldn't be surprised that my entire LaTeX setup is based on Git for file management. Working Copy is the industry standard Git client on iOS. It integrates with the Files app to make all its repositories available to other apps. Taxtastic and TaxWriter take full advantage of that. Basically, all my source files for LaTeX documents, like tax and bib files, are stored in Working Copy and version controlled by Git, while Taxtastic and TaxWriter open them in place to edit and compile. A typical workflow for writing and typesetting a LaTeX document in this setup is the following. First, initiate a repository in Working Copy with the .gitignore file to untrack intermediate files generated by LaTeX. I'll link the gitignore file in the description. Optionally, push the repository to some Git hosting service, say GitHub. Open the repository in Taxtastic. Create a new text file and type the document. Open the repository in TaxWriter. And compile the text file to save the PDF. Continue to edit in Taxtastic and compile in TaxWriter until done. Occasionally go back to Working Copy to commit meaningful changes. Check and correct spelling for the final draft in TaxWriter. Compile the final document in TaxWriter. Finally, commit, and optionally push the repository in working copy. Due to the large amount of app switching between TextWriter and Textastic in this workflow, it's best to open them side by side in split view. This setup has been a significant effort for me, but the results are worthwhile in my opinion. Now I can write and typeset LaTeX documents anywhere, even without internet. Bringing an iPad with me has been much easier. The limitations are also quite limited, unless I need some other typesetting engines like ZLaTeX for FontSpec and Lua LaTeX for Tizfyman. The iPad Pro with this setup can serve me perfectly well.